Hello, hello, and welcome to all you PMOs, PMEs, POMOs, POMEs, and PIMQs. Welcome to the world, the podcast where we discuss all things related to the process of waking up, walking out, and moving on from life as a Jehovah's Witness. Okay, so the holidays are a-comin'. And with it, that whole mess that comes with it for all us ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I'll be releasing some episodes in the coming months that address that topic more directly. But given the approach of Halloween, it felt like an appropriate time to approach the very spooky topic of death. Oh, I don't know about you, but I love Halloween. It's one time a year that it becomes socially acceptable to just jump out and scare people. We're allowed to reconnect to our inner child and pretend to be superheroes and monsters and sexy nurses and sexy construction workers, sexy minions from Despicable Me. You get the idea. And instead of going door to door threatening people with Armageddon, we get to demand candy under the threat of playful mischief. And yeah, it's also an opportunity to look at all the things that scare us dead in the eye and laugh. And that's the spirit we're going to try to bring to today's show, as we take an unflinching look at the spooky topic of death. Now, let me just take a second to acknowledge the magnitude of this topic. Normally I make bite-sized episodes where I take some subject, trim the fat, and distill everything into the most simplest, most straightforward elements, plus the occasional self-indulgent rant. And then I present it to you in a nice bow. But this topic of death, it feels a bit arrogant to approach it with the same overly confident swagger. It's just such a big, personal topic. And as I started writing it, I realized I was a little bit over my head. So for this reason, today's show is going to be a kind of explorative meditation. Let's call it a trick-or-treat goodie bag assortment of my own observations, my own experiences, and bits of wisdom I've absorbed from others. And we may not figure it all out, but hopefully by the end of this episode, death will maybe feel just a little bit less spooky. So just to give you a peek at the agenda, we're going to start by taking an unfiltered look at the blunt reality of death. We're going to follow that up with some different ways to think about death that'll help take the edge off. And then finally, I'm going to spend a little time sharing some of my own personal experiences with the afterlife. It'll be a little bit of a believe it or not type story. Now, before we continue, let me just give you a heads up. Throughout this episode, we're going to be talking bluntly and often irreverently about the topic of death. We're not going to sugarcoat it or pussyfoot around the scary bits. And some of the ways I express myself may hit you a little bit dark. Please know that I only share them in the hopes that you see the hidden beauty in these ideas that I see. But fair warning, if the topic of death feels potentially triggering for you, and spending time thinking about your own demise is a bit overwhelming, that's totally fine. I would encourage you to just skip this one. Okay, so let's start with talking about death within the Jehovah's Witness context. One of the biggest draws of most organized religion is that it sells us on this fantasy of cheating death. It gives you this loophole that promises if we just do everything right, we can escape the certainty of a permanent and final ending. But it's not just a way to bypass our own innate fear of our own death, but it bypasses the pain we experience of losing those we love. Just a quick segue. How fucking awful are Jehovah's Witness funerals? They're just the worst. I think the general intention behind most funerals is, one, to spend a good amount of time really honoring the person, and two, make space to really grieve and cry and feel sad amongst people you love. Jehovah's Witnesses funerals are like 45 minutes of propaganda and about 10 minutes about the actual person, usually based around praising them for being such a loyal servant. And then I don't know if they do this at funerals in general, but I remember when I was younger and my adopted father died. At the end, they had us sit up in the front of the Kingdom Hall while a line of about 120 congregation members just kind of came up, shook our hand. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for your loss. And it just felt so empty and awful. It felt like it was none of the things that grieving or funeral should be about. And then, of course, yeah, there's some space made for sadness, but it's just so quickly met with, well, don't be too sad. because we'll see them in paradise. And there's this weird kind of implication that if you're too sad about it, it conveys that you don't have enough faith that you will see them in paradise. Maybe I'm just adding that, but that's how it felt to me. Now, quick side note, I was hoping that in this episode I'd have time to address how to come to terms with the realization that we won't see these loved ones in paradise. But I realize that this is a topic that really deserves its own episode, so I'm going to save that for a later time. But yeah, the end result of all this religious bypassing is that death is just one of many human experiences we're cut off from. And when we leave, this is one of the biggest things we have to grapple with. There's a big question mark around, what happens after we die? We've been told that our whole purpose of being on this earth is to achieve entrance into paradise after we die. But without that, what are we supposed to do now? Is there some other performance-based system we need to find in order to guarantee life after death? Or do we just throw that whole idea out the window and wing it? Now, obviously, this isn't something I can answer for you, definitively anyways. But I do have some thoughts on the subject that I'll be sharing later in the show. For now, let's just start by sitting with what we do know, which is that we will, in fact, die. I know, it's an uncomfortable thought, but let's just take a second and sit with the actuality of it, just for a bit. Let's lean into the discomfort. Again, just give me a minute. It's going to get a little uncomfortable, but it's all right. Let's just sit with it for a second. Okay, let's cue up a little spooky music. Okay, so you are going to die. That's right. I'm talking to you, Jeff. I'm talking to you, Michael. I'm talking to you, Sarah, and Jennifer, and Justin, and Kevin, and Gretchen, and Frank, and everyone else who's listening. You are all going to grow old and die. Me too. You may not even grow old. I mean, it's possible you could die in the middle of this podcast. Okay, that's a little dark. No, you're not going to die. It's fine. You're going to be fine. I'm almost certain you're going to be fine. But yeah, there will come a point in time where everything that you are and have ever been will cease to exist. And no matter what kind of amazing feats you have accomplished during your time on this earth, on a long enough timeline, you will be forgotten. There will be a point in time where nobody living will remember you or have any idea that you ever existed. You are going to die. And it's not just you. Everyone you know will die at some point, either before or after you. About 100 people on Earth die every minute, which means about 1,000 people died since you started listening to this episode. But it's not just people. Animals, plants, fish, fungi, all die. All species will eventually die. Yes, even humans. Cultures, societies, ideologies, political systems, ecosystems will die. Planets will die. Yes, that includes Earth. Suns will die. Solar systems will die. And galaxies will die. On a long enough timeline, all that is and ever was will be no more. And something completely different will take its place. Death comes for us all, and we have no idea what happens next. The end. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's show. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, feedback, or nah, I'm just playing. Of course, we have more to talk about. But man, you feel that chill? Brrr. Those are some uncomfortable ideas. But you did great. You made it through the hard part. We looked at death up close, and well, it didn't kill us. Let's warm ourselves up with a hot cup of more comforting ideas. So yeah, we're all pretty freaked out about death. We just don't like the idea of ourselves not being. And at least in part, some of this dread is cultural. Western culture, to be more specific. The attitude in Western culture towards death is mostly about avoiding, denying, or delaying death. There's so many anti-aging products and plastic surgery, and nobody really wants to talk about it. If you do try to talk about it, you'll likely get redirected pretty quickly to a topic that's less of a downer. Or you'll get met with some kind of platitude like, well, you're still young. You've got a lot of life left to live. So can we please stop talking about this now? And then, when someone dies, we're in such a hurry to get the body out of the house, and no one wants to buy a house that somebody died in. Oh, and don't get me started on these open casket funerals. I don't know about you, but it just freaking creeps me out. To see these bodies just all gussied up in a way that makes them look like a tarted up ventriloquist doll. I'm assuming the intention is to try to make them look like they're still alive, which they most certainly are not. And the hope is that maybe this will take some of the edge off the fact that what you're looking at is in fact a very dead body. I don't know. Maybe it's comforting to you, but like my grandpa never wore makeup or blush except at his funeral. But yeah, back to the denial of the whole thing. So much of our lives, we act as if death is never coming. We burn time like it is an infinite commodity. Can you imagine on your deathbed looking back at your life and realizing you spent more time on your phone and watching TV than you did connecting with those you love or going on life adventures? Can you imagine how sad that would be? And yet that's pretty much the case, man. Studies have shown that on average, people are spending time looking at screens at least 7 hours a day. How much time do you spend connecting with family or friends? It's definitely not 7 hours a day. And yeah, it's because we're completely cut off from the limited nature of our life. We're cut off from the actuality of how limited our time is here. We don't like to think about it. It's just like an icky thing to think about. So we don't, and then we end up wasting our time on stupid shit. Clearly, this is just bringing up some feelings for me. But yes, this limited amount of time is our first stop in looking at the bright side of death. Death and a healthy sense of awareness of death is what makes life precious. Knowing our family and friends or beloved pets won't be with us forever invites us to really prioritize our presence and our connection with them. Knowing that they'll be gone one day and you'll miss them. You'll feel sad, and it'll feel so much more sad when you look back and wish you had spent more time when you had the chance. This comes up a lot for me with my dog, Artex. Artex, this dude, this dog, is my heart in such a difficult way. I love him so much. He has been with me since he was a puppy, and he's pretty much never been away from my side. And I love him so much, and when I look at him, I am also struck by the stark reality that his lifespan is so much shorter than mine. And I've got a lot of heartache waiting at the end of this journey with him. But every time I feel that and sit with it and allow the feelings to come, it moves me to connect with him and play fetch with him and pet him and love him and play with him and just be with him because it's so clear that this is such a short amount of time I have. So yeah, the finite nature of our time here is exactly what makes it valuable. Now, part of what can get in the way of us experiencing the joy of that truth, that life is meant to be lived and it's precious, is that we've been hardwired to view life as a performance exam, which will be graded upon at our death. Now, of course, within the JWs, it means the degree to which we abstain from all the beautiful things that life has to offer and devote all our time to infecting others with their message will determine how secure we can feel that we will be rewarded with our place in paradise after we die. But JWs don't have the market cornered on this. Many, if not most, religions apply this concept with some version of the reward of heaven. If you're a good little boy or girl, you'll get the ultimate pat on the head when you ascend to heaven. Or some have a similar kind of interpretation of karma, with the reward being a better reincarnation in the next life. Which, side note, most agree that this way of thinking about karma is a bit misguided. But yeah, this idea that the universe, or life, is essentially a merit-based system where only those who perform the best will be deserving of God's love is pervasive. And it's fucking bullshit. It's just an extension of how humans think of most things. that only the highest performing among us are truly worthy of love and respect. And yeah, it's fucking bullshit. Now, again, I know I'm being a little overly confident now, and you're probably saying, okay, Ryan, well, prove it then. How do you know that this isn't the case? That our performance isn't rewarded or punished at the end of our lives? And you know what? I can't prove it. Just like nobody can prove that it is merit-based, or that God exists, or the Bible is the Word of God. Nobody can really prove shit about anything. All I can do is encourage you to seek out the answers yourself. Because in my own personal experience, I found that it's true, the idea that if you seek, you shall find. I suppose not everything in the Bible is garbage. Now, initially, I was going to spend this episode on doing a kind of review of different spiritual and cultural ways of thinking about death. But you guys have Google. You really don't need me to read you that book report. So instead of giving you a sampler of different death ideas, I thought it might be more meaningful for me to just share my own experience with what awaits on the other side of death. And I don't expect you to just take it at face value, although you're welcome to, if it aligns with you. But I can tell you that I am as certain as a human being can be that what I'm about to tell you is true. And I assure you that none of this is fabricated. I've had multiple encounters with the afterlife through my experience with psychedelics. These are very personal experiences, and I was a little hesitant about whether I wanted to talk about it in such an open forum. But I feel like maybe sharing them a little bit might encourage other people to explore a little bit more. I'm just going to share a little bit about the concept of ego death. So to overly simplify it, it's basically the idea that the actuality of this universe is that we are all part of it. However, on this plane of existence, we carry individual identities and conceive of ourselves as separate and isolated from each other and from the universe around us. This, in a nutshell, is ego. It's an identity that has a very strong vested interest in maintaining itself, in maintaining its sense of importance, its individuality. And for the ego to conceive of itself as not existing is simply unthinkable. It's like, I'm too important. I'm Ryan. What would the world be without Ryan? The truth is, clinging too tightly to our ego is the equivalent of a drop of water being obsessed with being the most special drop of water in the ocean. Ego death is the experience of completely disidentifying with the drop and experiencing the more fundamental truth that you are the infinite ocean. And pretty much without exception, when people have this experience, there's this inevitable sense of oneness and peace and a complete dissolution of the fear of death. And ego death is something that we will all experience eventually when our body dies. But it's also something we can experience before then. As Eckhart Tolle says, or Eckhart Tolle, I've heard it pronounced both ways. I still don't know the proper one. But he says, find death before death finds you. And this is what he's referring to, the experience of ego death or ego dissolution. Over the course of my journey with psychedelics, spanning the last 20 years, there's one particular experience involving ego death that I've encountered at least 4 times. And the consistency across each of these experiences in showing me what lies after death has contributed to my certainty that what I experienced was real. And this certainty was further reinforced by accounts of others who've had the same ego death experience and reported very similar encounters. And here's my best attempt at conveying what I saw. First and foremost, there is nothing to be afraid of at all. Definitely not in relation to death, but really in general. I mean, of course, in our daily life, we're going to feel fears and anxieties, and that's part of being in this plane of existence. But in the ultimate grand sense, there is nothing to be afraid of at all. Beneath all the noise of life, beneath all the pain, the wars, the battles over beliefs, beneath the heartbreaks, the struggles, beneath the beauty and the triumph and the defeats, is this infinite ocean of joy. And already I could feel some of you just rolling your eyes into the back of your skull, and I don't blame you. I felt and reacted the same way when I'd heard people talk about these things before. And it makes sense. If you haven't encountered it or experienced, it just sounds naive and childlike to believe such a thing. But all I can tell you is I swear, I promise you, I am not bullshitting you. But yeah, let me go on about explaining a little bit more. So, the underlying foundation of existence is very hard to put into words that capture it because it's so removed from what our life is like on this plane of existence. But here are some things that I learned through that experience. First off, I really want to try to convey, and it's really hard to put into words, is the fact that we are all individual, tiny microfraction extensions of the same, I'll say it, God. Not the God that we've been told about in any number of ways. They've pretty much got it all wrong. But this kind of universal essence. And I'd love to be able to say, like, the grandma that you lost, you're going to see her when you die. You will, but the thing that you reconnect with isn't just grandma, it's the whole picture. It's like being really sad about losing a button on a shirt and forgetting the fact that you actually lost the whole shirt. And once you die, you not only get all the buttons, but you get the whole shirt. I don't know if that makes any fucking sense. It sounds crazy when I say it out loud, but there is something there. There is some sort of thing that the thing that you are worried about, the things that you are attached to, the people that you're attached to, you get it all back. You reconnect with all of it and you recognize you're part of it. They are you and you are them and we are us and we are all together. And I am sounding like a crazy person. I understand. This is my best effort to try to convey something that just simply can't quite be put into words. But there it is. While I've yet to have an experience that explains why this is the case, what it has shown me every time is that this human plane of existence only exists as an opportunity for the universe or God or whatever you want to call it to experience itself, to experience the thrill of the human drama, the thrill of believing that we're small and powerless, if for no other reason than to experience the profound joy again and again through our natural death or death experiences that everything is utterly and profoundly okay. Not even just okay, but unimaginably wonderful. And from the perspective of this experience, it's so easy to recognize the delicious drama of this existence. It's like a play or a soap opera that you can't stop watching. All the villains, the heroes, the suspense, the need to know what's going to happen next. Where's this going to go? How are they going to get themselves out of this pickle? And it's captivating. It makes you feel things: love, hatred, anger, sadness, excitement, anticipation, elation, power, and powerlessness. And just like a play, when the show is over, when the death curtain closes, we hold no grudge against the actor who played the villain. Not only do we not hold a grudge, but we applaud them for putting on such a wonderful show, for making us feel so deeply. In all of these encounters that I've had with ego death, there has been a clear message that even those of us that we consider the most vile, the most heinous, the Hitlers of the world, all of these people, the worst of us, will absolutely have redemption, grace, and total forgiveness. Everything is forgiven. In fact, even better, there's a realization that there was never anything to forgive in the first place. It was all just part of the show. And as I'm sharing this, it makes my heart happy that maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody out there is hearing what I'm saying and it resonates with you. Maybe some deep, dormant part of you that vaguely remembers your connection to this profound, eternal spirit. But I feel pretty certain that for most of you, you're thinking, well, that sounds nice, but why should I believe that over any other idea anyone else has told me about the afterlife? And you know what? You're absolutely right. I felt the exact same way. And despite the fact that I encountered these same ideas embedded in the wisdom of people like Ram Dass, Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle, the Buddha, and even Jesus. I mean, just quick tangent, when you account for the lost Gospels and other books that were filtered out from the Bible, as well as numerous translation errors, like the difference between Jesus saying he was a son of God versus the Son of God, and the components of his message about forgiveness and compassion, even for those considered to be the most despicable by society. There's a lot there in Jesus' message that points to the things I'm saying. But anyways, I digress. My point was that despite encountering these ideas prior to my ego death experiences, they remained in the area of nice ideas until I experienced them firsthand. So no, if what I'm telling you doesn't resonate as truth for you, then don't take my word for it. What I would say is please go find out for yourself. This is one of the most worthwhile quests you can go on. Find death before death finds you. Because once we know what awaits for us after death, once we see that there is nothing really to fear, and once we know that what awaits us at the end of this life is infinite love and grace, regardless of our performance on this earth, then life takes on a whole different quality. It becomes more of a dance, a playful dance, or a beautiful game that's nice to win, but really what feels most important is to have fun and interesting experiences. Find death before death finds you. Now, for some, that may mean exploring psychedelics. And side note, don't expect that psychedelics are like buying a guaranteed ticket to ego death. It's not entirely impossible that your first encounter with psychedelics might give you this experience, but probably not likely. Personally, I've had hundreds of experiences over the last 20 years and only experienced ego death maybe 4 times. But psychedelics are not for everyone, and so please don't take this as like you need to go out and do psychedelics. If it calls to you, great. Go explore, by all means. But don't be like, well, Dr. Ryan said I should go down to Peru and take some ayahuasca, so I guess I'm going to do it. It's not the only path. There's lots of different ways to encounter death. Meditation can be a path, and actively learning to recognize and gradually detach from the ego can be a path. Some people may reach this state through unfiltered, unflinching acceptance and exploration of death. And the truth is, probably for most of us, we'll make this discovery at the moment of our actual death. And that's just fine too. If nothing else, these experiences have taught me there's no wrong way to do it. There's no wrong way to do this life. There's no wrong way to do our death. They're just different paths that take us to the same place. As Ram Dass says, we're all just walking each other home.
We met as soulmates on Paris Island. We left as inmates from an asylum. And we were sharp as knives. And we were so gung-ho to lay down our lives.
I'm not sure how this episode landed with all of you. And I don't expect that anything I've shared will become so easily true for you. But I really hope that if nothing else, it's planted a seed that there are different stories, different ways of seeing and understanding the world. And we don't need to cling to the nightmares we were taught as children. There are other stories, other experiences, and other truths that don't leave you feeling so scared of this beautiful life. I'm getting sentimental. This song just hits me in the heart space. Anyways, thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. And pay it forward by sharing this podcast with other people who might benefit. If you have any questions, feedback, or ideas for future topics, visit my website at drryanlee.com. Until next time, remember, you are brave. You are strong. You can totally do this. And whether you want to believe me or not, I promise you, when all is said and done, everything is going to be just fine.